You bought the lot 4 years ago.
We broke ground about 13 months ago. From breaking ground to getting the certificate of occupancy was 24 weeks.
Wow, yeah.
And that's pretty fast for, basically it's a custom built house. I wanted to design a house. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get this vacant lot. I wanted to design a house, and I wanted to do something that was in keeping with the spirit of a Charleston single house. If you see a lot of single houses around Charleston now, you'll notice that in the 19th and 20th century, things were added on. So they have bump outs and L's, and they're not rectangular boxes anymore. So we really wanted to have just a plain vanilla rectangular box. This area, even though it's an area that's not as affluent as South Abroad, this is still part of the historic district. So everything we had to do had to go before the Board of Architectural Review.
Which is a big thing here.
Big process. It's definitely a process you have to educate yourself about. So kind of working within the parameters of a traditional single house, I said, well, I can do this. It's not rocket science. And Christina has a building background, so she was able to give me a lot of pointers on construction techniques, costs, and try to keep the costs down. The city's BAR process is you have to submit your plans for approval to them. Met some people on the staff and talked with them informally about it, and they said, well, just bring in your drawings. So I would sketch something up and go in and have an informal conversation, and they would give me some pointers and say, well, this is acceptable and this is not acceptable. So by the time I had my finished drawings done,
and you were ready to really submit.
And they told me, yes, you're ready. Go ahead and put yourself on the agenda. So I had to go and make a formal presentation to the Board of Architectural Review. And they said, well, you're ready. This will probably get passed. Don't worry about it.
If you had a friend, or if you knew somebody that was wanting to maybe move into Hampstead Village, what kind of advice would you give them?
If you want to come into this neighborhood, or really any neighborhood on the peninsula, you really have to do a little bit of research to figure out what's going on in the history of it, and what you're getting, and what kind of requirements the city is going to impose on you. You know, some people say, well, maybe I'm not going to pull a permit, I'm just going to replace X, Y, and Z. This is one of those cases where it's absolutely better to ask first, and instead of trying to apologize later, because if you get on the city's bad side, I mean, that's not...
They're serious. I mean, they're serious about the aesthetics of this.
And the preservation community takes renovation or new construction very seriously. So there are a lot of hoops that, and you have to respect those hoops. And if you show respect for the hoops the city's going to make you jump through, then they will help you out. So you know, go in and explain to the city, I'm interested, even before you buy it. I went to the city and said, I'm considering buying this vacant lot. What I would like to do is build a single family house and remove a couple of trees. And they pulled up their files and said, yes, that'll be fine. You know, no real issues, as long as you're not, you know, building on 90% of the property. So for example, in this area, you can only build on 50% of the property. You have to leave 50% vacant. You can get a variance, but you have to make a presentation explaining why they should give you a variance. And they want you to have off-street parking, so you have to learn about all these things. Even if you're renovating a house,
that was going to be my next question.
They're going to require that you use certain kind of materials that are in keeping with the historic fabric of the neighborhood, and you keep to a certain style, and you respect the fabric of the building that you're renovating. You can't just rip off what you want, and you can't demolish something just because you want. And if you want to build new, the city's going to encourage you to build in a manner like we did here that's sympathetic to the historic nature of it, but not a carbon copy. The city doesn't want fake historic. We had to make a few concessions here and there because the city didn't want it to look like a carbon copy of a Williamsburg kind of house or something. The flood elevation in this area is 13 feet above mean sea level. That's what FEMA requires. And the sidewalk is 9 feet. So we had to go up 4 feet, but we asked the city to go up 7 feet so we'd have a workshop space under the house. And using photographs of other houses in the neighborhood and on this street, we were able to successfully argue to go up 7 feet. So we kind of had to know the system, get to know the system, and go and make a presentation and answer all the questions appropriately. And in the end, they said, yeah, sure, that's fine.
Well, great. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.